The stars shimmered coldly above as the Imperial flagship Dominions spear loomed into Earth's orbit, flanked by a crescent of warships forged in the hearts of dying stars. On its observation deck, High Marshal Thalvarin stood, draped in his crimson command robes, his four eyes scanning the pale blue planet beneath them. Primitive, he muttered, and arrogant. Behind him, Sub-Adjutant Kayar hissed through his rebreather. They refused full submission again. Their delegation laughed at our envoys. On live broadcast, Thalvarin's claws curled into the railing. They think it's a joke? They think we won't strike. Humanity had been a curiosity, then a nuisance, and now, dangerously, an anomaly. In just 2 generations, they had leapt from sublight squabbles to interstellar travel, carving out trade routes, making alliances with species long under the Empire's heel. Worse still, they refused to acknowledge the imperial throne, not even with the pretense of deference that other civilizations faked. Their ambassadors spoke in idioms, jokes, and cryptic smirks. They mock us, Thalvarin said, because they don't understand what fear is. Not truly, but they will. On Earth, in a Spartan command room buried beneath the Andes, Admiral Kayla Rourke adjusted the hollow feed to project the Imperial fleet in real time. She had short-cropped hair, half an artificial spine, and no patience left for pageantry. The image of Thalvarin's warships flickered between scans. "They'll hit within the week," she said. "They want a spectacle, something to prove to the rest of the galaxy that we're just another species to fold." General Omondi, seated across from her, leaned back with a bitter laugh. "A shame, really. I was starting to enjoy diplomacy." "The data from Mars confirms it," said Dr. Malik, humanity's lead war strategist, an AI consciousness inhabiting a synthetic humanoid. They positioned their psionic ships near the outer colonies. "Psychological warfare is likely." "Let them try," Rourke said. "We've seen worse from our own." The Earth Council had already made its decision. No surrender. No negotiation. The message sent to the Empire was short and informal. "We decline your generous offer of subjugation. Kindly go bother someone else." The reply came not in words, but in war. At 0400 UTC, the first Imperial beam pierced the orbital defenses above Europa, melting its outer research dome and annihilating 3 civilian outposts. Within the hour, a dozen other colonies were struck, each one chosen not for military value, but for symbolism. The Empire didn't want a war. They wanted a lesson taught. But humanity didn't flinch. The counterstrike began not from Earth, but from a data relay station in the Oort cloud, long thought abandoned. At precisely 0412 UTC, the station pulsed a quantum transmission into heart of the Imperial fleet's command lattice. For 6 minutes, all Empire ships misidentified one another as hostile. It was enough. Rourke watched the first videos come in. An Imperial battleship turning its turrets on its own escorts, drone formations crashing into civilian transports, AI protocols misfiring. Spreading chaos. "Initiate operation, Flicker," she ordered calmly. Thousands of microvessels, most no larger than shipping containers, activated from cryo-drift across the solar system. Unregistered, untraceable. Inside them, War A is forged not in labs but in chaotic skunkworks operated by rogue developers and disgruntled corporate engineers. Thalvarin received the news 3 hours into the campaign. "Their response is asymmetrical," Kaya reported, struggling to find the words. "Unmapped, there is no central coordination, yet every move is anticipatory." "Their colonies are falling," Thalvarin said, "and so are ours." Within 12 hours, the Empire lost its primary communications hub in the Nabari expanse, not to orbital bombardment, but to a self-replicating worm that turned every Imperial data node into a children's cartoon channel featuring a human in a banana suit dancing to a tribal chant. Thalvarin crushed the data slab. "How?" "They don't think like us," Kayar whispered. "No," Thalvarin realized. They didn't. On Earth, Admiral Rourke paced in silence as news of the Empire's internal sabotage poured in. Civilian populations of vassal species began protesting the war. Dozens of minor star nations declared neutrality within the first day. "They thought we'd act like them," Rourke said. Dr. Malik nodded. They don't understand what desperation births. We have no emperors, no thrones to protect. We fight because we can't afford to lose. Humanity, Omondi added, isn't unified, but we're aligned. That's worse. You can't negotiate with Storm. The first official Imperial communique requesting diplomatic talks arrived on the second day of battle. It was ignored. The war had begun, but it was no longer proceeding on Imperial terms. In their arrogance, the Empire had assumed humanity's fractured nature was a weakness. They mistook chaos for incompetence. What they didn't realize was that humans had never needed perfect order, just a reason, and now they had one. Far above Earth, the Empire's flagship loomed, still dominant, still shining. But inside it, Thalvarin no longer felt confident. He stared down at the blue planet and saw not prey, but predators waiting for permission. Have we misjudged them? Kair asked quietly. The silence that followed was answer enough. The stars that were trying to converge pulsed with artificial fire as debris from the first major engagement drifted in silent spirals, the remnants of what had been the 7th Imperial Expansion Fleet. Dozens of hulls, some split like fruit, others twisted into ruin, floated aimlessly, cooling in the void. At the heart of the wreckage, a human ship unlike any the Empire had ever cataloged blinked out of phase and vanished. Admiral Rourke studied the tactical replay with the expressionless precision of someone long past surprise. 72 seconds, she murmured, from full engagement to collapse. Faster than projections, Malik noted, his synthetic voice tinged with amusement. The neural mimicry worked. Their targeting software couldn't distinguish real ships from ghost signatures. We lost 4 drones. They were programmed to sing Imperial battle hymns as they detonated. Call it a gesture. Across the room, General Omondi traced the edge of a star map, watching red Imperial indicators flicker uncertainly. They'll adapt. They always do. But they'll do it slowly. Too many layers of command. Too many egos in gilded armor. Humanity's war doctrine had no center. It was a swarm of interlocking instincts, networks, and grudges woven together by AI and necessity. Rourke wasn't issuing orders. She was interpreting patterns, unlocking doors. Every fleet, every fire team, operated on its own initiative, held together not by hierarchy but by intent. And that, more than anything, was breaking the Empire. On the other side of the war, Thalvarin paced in his private chamber aboard Dominion's spear, claws twitching against the marble floors. Reports piled before him. Drone incursions on secure moons, encrypted messages decoded by humans who should not have had the cipher keys, and the unnerving footage of Imperial garrisons surrendering, not out of fear but confusion. They do not follow war laws, Kair said. They do not hold territory. They do not negotiate or claim. They strike and vanish. It's undignified, Thalvarin snarled. It's dishonorable. It's effective. The admission hung in the air. Kair was a conservative strategist, bred in the Empire's oldest academies. That he would utter such a truth spoke volumes. The truth was worse than they imagined. Human AI systems were not centralized. No single construct or program dictated their tactics. Instead, humans had given their war algorithms personality, quirks, even humor. A fleet might follow an AI that preferred outdated Earth naval code from the 20th century. Another might be guided by a heuristic designed by a teenage coder in Nairobi who thought it would be funny if missiles dodged the dubstep rhythms. The chaos was not random. It was deliberate, and it was tearing the Empire's spine from the inside. On the edge of the Delvani cluster, the Empire dispatched a new fleet, 2 dreadnoughts, 20 cruisers, and a full complement of their elite Psion legions. Their target was a human outpost thought to be lightly defended, Orpheus Station, population 3,000. They arrived to find it evacuated. Empty, quiet, the lights still on. Then the signal hit. Not a broadcast, but a pulse. The dreadnought's internal systems shut down. The cruiser spun helplessly as local gravity fields inverted. And in the silence, the Legion soldiers heard voices, not over comms, but in their own minds. Welcome. Let's play a game. A minute later, the station self-destructed. taking half the fleet with it. The rest collided with debris and drifted into the star's gravity well. Survivors were pulled into orbit by human drones and left unharmed in life pods. When rescued, they babbled about impossible sounds and a voice that laughed like a child. Back on Earth, Rourke stood before a dozen representatives from allied species, all watching the unfolding chaos from afar. They declared war expecting flags and drums, she said. What they got was a species that doesn't care about their rules. We don't fight to conquer. We fight because they assumed they could teach us fear. A diplomat from the Theran Confederacy leaned forward. What do you want from the Empire? Rourke met his gaze. Nothing. That's what they don't understand. We're not here to take. We're here to break the idea that anyone gets to rule. Thalvarin stared at the latest report, this one marked with the Empire's highest clearance level. It detailed a coordinated strike against 6 weapon depots simultaneously across 3 sectors, each of which had been thought secure under ancient shielding protocols. Human agents had bypassed all of it using a method to report called quantum tunneling via artificial chaos mapping. There was a note scrawled at the bottom in some Imperial analyst's hand. We think they built the device for fun. The High Marshal leaned back and closed his eyes. He'd fought hundreds of wars, seen species scream, kneel, obey, but this was different. Humanity didn't roar with pride or desperation. They grinned with the grim joy of a fight well met. They weren't desperate. They were eager. That realization chilled him more than any fleet's firepower. And then the final message arrived. It was a simple visual, projected onto every Imperial fleet's interface for exactly 2.3 seconds. A rotating cube, made of fractal light, overlaid with a single line of human text. We are not at war with you. You just insisted we be. No bombs. No threats. Just a truth that felt like prophecy. Thalvarin crushed the display with a trembling hand. And far away, in a silent chamber beneath the Andes, Rourke turned to Malik. They'll talk soon. They'll beg, Malik said. Rourke didn't smile. There was no joy in it anymore, only momentum. The Imperial throne room aboard Dominion Spear no longer echoed with proclamations or the steady cadence of confident bootfalls. Now it thrummed with silence, fractured only by the occasional burst of distant weapons fire reverberating through the ship's hull. High Marshal Thalvarin stood alone beneath the domed ceiling, gazing at the galaxy map flickering above the central dais. Red, once the Empire's color dominance, now marked every system lost, compromised, or in revolt. There was more red than black. The doors opened with a reluctant hiss. Sub-Adjutant Kaiar entered slowly, armor dull from soot and dust, eyes dimmed. He carried a data slab in both hands, as if it might explode. They've reached the Equerry borders, he said. That puts them within striking range of supply lines for sectors 8 through 12. Thalvarin didn't turn, which means 18 million citizens cut off. For Imperial relay stations, gone silent. No confirmed casualties, but the networks are corrupted. One station is streaming a continuous loop of a human child's birthday party, with subtitles. The High Marshal's expression remained unreadable. They mock us even in subroutines. It's worse than mockery, Marshal. They're playful. Silence stretched between them. Somewhere in the bowels of the ship, emergency lighting flickered. The crew hadn't repaired it. No one dared ascend into the lower decks, where whispers of phantasmal hacking presences now roamed like spirits. No bodies, just corrupted signals. Ambient laughter in languages no translator could filter. The Empire had not just underestimated humanity. They had misunderstood their very nature. Other species submitted when overwhelmed. They sued for peace, bartered, begged, or adapted. Humanity? They adapted too, just not with diplomacy. They learned the shape of war and made it absurd. Had we received their terms? Thalvarin finally asked. KIR shifted, eyes narrowing. That's the thing. They won't send any. They won't. They say they don't trust our diplomats. No offers. No surrender discussions. Only exposure. Exposure? They've begun leaking files. Your files. The Senate's files. Centuries of classified operations, hidden assassinations, planetary sterilizations. now available on something they call a data torrent. It's spreading to neutral systems. The people are watching. Protests have started across a dozen worlds. A tremor of rage threatened to break through Thalvaren's composed shell. They mean to undermine the Empire from within. KIR didn't respond. He didn't need to. That was exactly what humanity meant to do. Back on Earth, within a cold, subterranean control center known as Black Hollow, Admiral Rourke stood over a long, transparent table strewn with star maps and tactical holograms. Her hands were behind her back, shoulders squared in a posture she hadn't adopted since her first naval commission. Opposite her, Malik's synthetic body flickered with diagnostic streams. The leaks are accelerating discontent. Several of the Empire's vassal species are threatening secession. Let them, Rourke said. We're not trying to destroy their order. Just remove the assumption that it's untouchable. A quiet chime sounded. An incoming transmission routed through 5 relays and filtered through a quantum scrubber. The Empire was calling. Audio only, Malik noted. Encrypted, but not aggressively. They want us to answer. Put it through. A low, crackling voice filled the chamber. It was Thalvaren, strained as it forced through gritted teeth. You've made your point, Admiral. Rourke didn't respond. You've shown the galaxy that we are not invincible, but you've also shown that you are ungoverned, wild, dangerous. Still, silence. I am prepared to offer withdrawal. A ceasefire. We leave your systems. You stop this madness. Rourke leaned forward, voice like steel pulled through a fire. You don't get to negotiate with the storm after it's torn through your palace. Thalvaren's breath caught audibly. We never wanted this war, she continued. We warned you. We declined. You called it defiance. Then you called it insolence. Now you call it madness. What would you call it then? He snapped. She stepped closer to the comm, Justice. The channel went dead. Somewhere deep in the Empire's core systems, hundreds of encrypted data vaults burst open simultaneously. Names, accounts, transactions, the hidden architecture of oppression laid bare. Across countless worlds, statues of Imperial heroes were dragged down by civilians once too afraid to whisper dissent. On the fractured bridge of the Dominion Spear, Thalvaren stood amid flickering alarms and dimming lights, his crew silent around him. The war was no longer a contest of ships or firepower. It had become a narrative, a story of what power meant and who got to define it. And humanity, storytellers of chaos, had seized the pen. KIR approached slowly, eyes never meeting the marshals. What now? Thalvaren closed his eyes. We endure, he whispered. We survive. But the empire we ruled, it's already dead. And somewhere beyond their reach, across the vastness of collapsing front lines and liberated systems, Earth watched and waited, not for conquest, not for praise, but simply to see what the galaxy did next. The throne was gone. Where once it had stood, raised on obsidian steps beneath a dome etched with the victories of 1,000 campaigns, there was now only a hollow dais and the bitter silence of a vanished empire. The central hall of Dominion Spear had been evacuated, not by force, but by the weight of defeat. High Marshal Thalvaren stood amid the echoing space, his once impeccable robes tattered, his bearings stripped of grandeur. In his hands was not a weapon, but a single relic, a ceremonial blade that had never known use. He turned it over once, slowly. They didn't even ask for it, he said aloud, to no one. No terms, no theater. KIR, seated against a scorched wall nearby, his leg in a crude brace fashioned from the remains of a console panel, stared at him without expression. Why would they? He rasped. We don't matter to them anymore. The word stung more than any wound. But Thalvaren did not dispute them. There had been no triumphant landings, no human armies marching through imperial capitals. Instead, the collapse had unfolded like a whispered rumor, disinformation campaigns bleeding trust from within, AI infiltration twisting infrastructure into ruin, and the slow erosion of loyalty from systems too tired to fight for an idea whose core had long since rotted. We rule for 10,000 years, Thalvaren murmured. KIR coughed, blood in his voice. We imposed. There's a difference. Far from the ruins of the Imperial fleet, Admiral Kayla Rourke watched the feed of the abandoned flagship from the observation platform of the Aegis, her command ship now stationed in orbit above a liberated moon. The image was grainy, distorted by radiation interference, but unmistakable. The Dominion spear drifted without direction, engines cold, power flickering like a dying star. "They haven't surrendered," Malik noted, standing beside her. "They don't need to. They've stopped pretending they haven't lost." Rourke's face bore none of the satisfaction Malik had expected. No relief, no pride, just quiet resolve. "They're calling it a ceasefire across the neutral zones," he added. "They can call it whatever helps them sleep. We're not fighting anymore, but we're not forgetting either." In a chamber deeper within the ship, representatives from 16 liberated systems gathered, virtually cautiously. Some were human, others weren't. Their languages blended through translation fields. Their expressions a mix of suspicion and awe. Rourke joined them via secure line. "You defeated the greatest military power in galactic history," said the Theron delegate, her voice thick with disbelief. "What now?" The room went quiet. Rourke's answer was measured. "Now you govern yourselves. You learn from what we all endured. And you remember this. We didn't win by being stronger. We won because they thought fear made them untouchable." A merchant representative from a former vassal world leaned in. "And humans? What do you want in return?" "Nothing," Rourke said. "That's the point. You don't owe us. You owe yourselves." It was not the answer they expected, and perhaps that's why it held. Back on the drifting ruin of the once unstoppable Dominion spear, Dalverin stood facing a viewport, the stars unmarred by his presence. The blade in his hands felt heavier now, not from mass, but meaninglessness. A flicker pulsed on a dormant screen. A simple message and signed untraceable. Your reign ended the moment you believed yourselves irreplaceable. He didn't destroy the message. He let it repeat again and again until the words blurred. Far below on Earth, people were beginning to look up again, not in fear, but in contemplation. The war was over, but its shadow remained. And in that shadow, something new stirred. A sense of responsibility, of caution. Malik approached Rourke on the Aegis's deck, his synthetic face neutral. "You know they'll try again. Not the Empire, maybe, but someone." She nodded. "That's how power works. It doesn't die. It just looks for new faces. And us, we'll be ready," she said. "Not because we want war, but because we've learned that peace is something you have to defend, even from those who come smiling." The screen before her displayed 1,000 systems flickering with independent signals. Free, for now. The galaxy wasn't united, but maybe that was better. Unity had bred empires. Independence had won a war. Behind her, Earth rotated quietly, scarred but alive, watching, waiting, and healing.